Lauren.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, thank you all so much for being here tonight. I am going to share my screen because since we don't get to be in person, we will have to do this via a PowerPoint. So, what just happened? Hold on. That's not what I wanted to share. Let's try again. I apologize. Tech is not my thing, folks. Okay, hopefully that's working now. So, again, we're going to talk about safe movement for people with Parkinson's now. And I prefer safe movement to exercise just because of what some of our just stereotypical impressions and just what we historically think of as exercise. So that's why you'll hear me a lot of times refer to this as safe movement as opposed to exercise. So the biggest move y'all made is you're here tonight. So thank you very much for coming. And I'm going to give a 50-cent tour of me and why I get to talk about exercise tonight with you all. My background is as an exercise physiologist. I got my master's what feels like a million years ago and spent quite a bit of time working in cardiac rehabilitation. So doing adaptive exercise and creating exercise programs for people who need a little bit of special attention. I also have a background in holistic nutrition, and most importantly, I think how it relates to tonight is I have not one, but two parents with Parkinson's. My dad passed away in 2016. And more recently, my stepmother was diagnosed with Parkinson's. So I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of what people with Parkinson's deal with and how you can best integrate safe movement into your day-to-day lives. So I'm going to start with my warning though. Check with your physician before anybody starts any sort of exercise program. You always want to check with your care providers and make sure there's not any what they refer to as a contraindication, a reason you should not be exercising. For the most part, there shouldn't be a reason for you not to move. I think exercise outside of the directions that come from your physician, exercise is the best thing you can do for yourself with Parkinson's. But just in case, sometimes on the cardiovascular side, there may be reasons they may want to do some assessments on you just to make sure that you are ready for an exercise program. So just always keep that in mind. And the million-dollar question, what's the best exercise for Parkinson's disease? And you can feel free to unmute yourselves and share if you have anything you think may be the best exercise for Parkinson's. You can raise your hand, I guess, on the Zoom board, and maybe Lauren, you can just let me know if there are any responses in the chat. I can't see that as I'm doing this, but best exercise for Parkinson's.
We do have one person who is raising their hand.
Okay.
Eusebius, I think. Eusebius, if you want to come on the microphone. And I see in the chat, Susan is saying whatever you will actually do.
Susan, did you see my next slide? Okay, it's not magic, exactly. One you will do. The greatest benefit is going to come from something you enjoy and something you will do. There's a million different things out there to do, and not everything appeals to everyone. I'm going to give you an example from my own personal here. I was told last year that I needed to stop running or else I needed a knee replacement. So I went and got, or my husband got me, which is sitting in the corner over there, it's not a Peloton, but along those lines, a stationary bike. It's called an Echelon. And since my husband's not in this room, I can say this. I think I've used it this many times in a year. I don't like bicycling. It is not my thing. I don't do it because I don't enjoy it. So take stock of what you enjoy and do something you enjoy, because that is what you're going to stick with. So, but let's take this back to Parkinson's disease and the fact that it is a movement disorder. And now I'm saying, hey, move more. So when we typically think of, back to what I said, exercise and stereotypical notions of exercise, I want you to think outside of that. And I want you to think more as movement being incorporated into your day-to-day life. There's the term that a lot of therapists will use, activities of daily living. And those are your things you do day to day. You're getting around in the kitchen to make dinner. You're walking your dog. I want you to think more in terms of how can you incorporate more movement into your day-to-day life, as opposed to thinking about a grueling exercise session. And I also want to, I want to make, I want to acknowledge the fact that, and I hope nobody is offended by this, many of those with Parkinson's tend to be a little bit older. We were actually talking about this today in our Dance for Parkinson's class, that there is a rise in early onset Parkinson's disease now, a lot more diagnosis and even earlier onset. But by and large, we're a little bit of an older population, and you probably did not come up through the years exercising. It's just, I think it's a little bit more mainstream now to later generations, but I don't know if everybody, I know my dad did not come up having an exercise regimen. So I just also want to acknowledge that, everybody is starting at a different place, and that has to be taken into account as well. So movement, back to what I said before, is perhaps the best way to keep Parkinson's symptoms at bay for as long as possible. Obviously, your medication is vital, and that comes before. But when I was at a physician appointment with my stepmom, maybe about 6 months ago, he said to her, the most important thing you can do is move. And I was like, yes, you're acknowledging that. And I think that we're coming a long way. And I think that most movement disorder specialists obviously are emphasizing that now. But again, back to that, this is a movement disorder. And the reality is sometimes it's hard to get moving. I'm going to start just with, this is kind of benefits of exercise more with regard to the population as a whole. So enhanced well-being and improved mood, those endorphins are real. And that's why I'm so reluctant to give them my running. Those endorphins are real. Stronger bones and joints, better digestion. And again, this is for the general population, but you can see how this would help with Parkinson's, because oftentimes digestion issues are a problem. Reduced chronic inflammation, enhanced immune function. And if nothing else, over these past 2 years, we have realized how much our immune systems really do come into play. Reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, so heart disease, less risk of a heart attack or stroke. A lowered risk for diabetes. Exercise helps maintain stable blood sugar and reduces insulin resistance. And there are some studies showing a link between insulin resistance and Parkinson's disease. So, back to kind of these past 2 years, we've heard a lot about those comorbidities. So this is not the diabetes and the cardiovascular disease and stroke. Those are not specific to Parkinson's disease. However, if we can keep those comorbidities at bay, then that helps your overall health and thus will help with your Parkinson's symptoms. Let's move to more specific, though, to Parkinson's. Okay. Increased flexibility of muscles and improved motion of joints. We know that Parkinson's tends to lend itself to rigidity, very rigid movement, and through exercise, you can help. I want you to think of a rubber band and its ability to stretch. So if we get those muscles and joints moving consistently, that's going to help with that rigidity that accompanies Parkinson's disease. Enhances quality of life. If you are feeling better and you're moving better, you're going to be able to get out there and live your best life. You are going to be able to get out there and spend time with your grandkids. You're going to be able to vacation with your spouse. So I don't necessarily look to the physical aspect of exercise benefits as much as I'm going to look to the quality of life benefits that come. Better posture. Parkinson's tends to come with a stooped forward-leaning posture. So exercises that are focusing on bringing your shoulders back and down and maintaining tall posture, less risk for falls, working on balance and working on your core are both going to help you. Don't mind my dog here in the background. I apologize. Are going to keep you from being as at risk for falls. Easier mobility with day-to-day tasks. So going about your day-to-day life, being able to go to the grocery store and shop, being able to go in the kitchen and prepare a meal, being able to take your dog for a walk. Faster, more coordinated movements. When people with Parkinson's walk, it tends to be a little bit, again, back to that rigid and a little bit slower. Consistent exercise and those neuromuscular connections will help with a more coordinated movement pattern. More mobile and independent. And I think that's one of the most important pieces of this, is to maintain your independence as long as possible. The more you can do for yourself, the better you're going to feel about yourself. Reports of less depression. And I think it's safe to say that Parkinson's and depression can go hand in hand. I know I've seen it in my own family members with Parkinson's. But back to those endorphins that get going with exercise, if that can help symptoms of depression, that's definitely motivation for a lot of us. And better sleep, which again tends to be an issue for people with Parkinson's. So if you can help yourself get better sleep at night, that also should be a reason to move a little bit more. So acknowledging that it is not easy to incorporate this into your day-to-day life. Look at it like you do taking your medication. So you're on a medication schedule and you take it at X time every day. Make that movement a priority. And don't think of it in terms of, I have to do this 30, 60-minute exercise session. It's not a one bout of exercise. It is cumulative. So if you do small 10-minute segments throughout the day, that is more than adequate. Even if you start off doing one 10-minute session, that is more than nothing. I tell my Dance for Parkinson's class, 80% of by being in the chair, you've gotten to 80% of it. Just by getting there, being in the chair in that room, you've made it 80% of the way. So it's not a big commitment that you need to make. And it's not a one size fits all. People with Parkinson's are in such varying stages of their disease, of their own fitness level, of their own ability to move through their day. So your exercise, your movement program is going to be very individualized. So what works for one of us may not work for another. And again, back to do what you enjoy, do what will keep you consistently moving. It's very individualized. And focus on activities of daily living. So again, ways that you can incorporate movement into your day. And joy in simple movement. So it's not as complicated as we tend to think of. Things you enjoy and can easily incorporate throughout the day. So classic excuses: I don't have enough time. I can't fit exercise into my busy schedule. I'm too tired to exercise. You know, and I'm going to give you some suggestions for how to work on these. I find it too hard to get motivated. And this is not specific to Parkinson's. Just keep that in mind. It's probably a little bit tougher, but these are the excuses I hear from anybody and everybody I've ever worked with regard to how to incorporate exercise. I'm not sure what exercises to do, and I'm not sure if I'm doing them correctly. And that's definitely something that I think is very prevalent with folks with Parkinson's, because you may not know exactly what to do, and you may not know how to do a movement the most safe way that you can. And I get bored when I try to exercise. Back to, what can you do that will keep you engaged, keep you enjoying it, keep you doing it consistently? So some helpful hints. Plan ahead, set a regular schedule. And I'm just going to try to move this because I can't even see my slides. And choose the same time of day to exercise. When I say same time of day, that is a matter of, some people prefer the mornings, some people prefer the afternoons, some people like to exercise in the evening. Back to that individualized approach. What works for you? I personally am a morning person. If I don't exercise before lunchtime, it's not happening. And I know very many people who they're not going to exercise until after dinner. So trying to find that zone of the day that works for you is going to help you be consistent. Getting support from family, friends, by telling them, I'm starting an exercise program. They can encourage you, they can give you support, they can give you accountability. I think that's a lot of the reasons why people hire trainers, coaches, because it's getting that accountability. If I have told somebody I'm going to meet them to go for a walk on Tuesday morning at 8 a.m., I'm going to show up. If it was just me, maybe I'd stay in and kind of sit with another cup of coffee. So that's the buddy system: exercise with a family member or a friend. Back to that motivation and accountability. If you have a spouse that will walk with you, or a spouse that will do a yoga video with you, then that is a perfect system. And exercise at the time of the day that you feel good and it's easier for you to move. Again, I may feel great in the morning to exercise, you may feel better in the afternoon. And with Parkinson's particularly, you need to take into account how you feel with regard to your medication doses. So it's going to require a little bit of planning on your part with regard to, when can you eat, when can you take your medication, and then when are you going to be on that you're able to do that exercise. So choosing to exercise when you're in an off period is not going to set you up for success. So keep that in mind. And you may need to kind of keep a journal for a couple of days if you're really new to starting this, to log when you wake, when you take your breakfast, when you take your medication, and when you feel at your best, because that will keep you from trying to exercise in those off periods and setting yourself up for failure. So be mindful of taking breaks. Rest when you feel tired. You do not have to be a warrior. You do not have to exercise for an hour. And don't rush to get through the session. Take your time and ask for help. This is probably, it's hard to ask for help. And I know probably finances come into play with this as well, with regard to, does insurance reimburse some of this? But if you have the ability to get instruction from a exercise professional, a physical therapist, even if it's to set you up on a program that you can then do on your own, just to ensure that you're doing the exercises in a safe manner. And I'm going to ask if anybody wants to ask a question at this point. If you wanted to unmute, we're going to do Q&A at the end, but I also want to, if there's anything that's come up so far that anybody wants to ask. Okay.
So Jennifer, there are a couple questions so far. Someone has said, can you please clarify for me the phrases on and off?
Okay, so those with Parkinson's will tend to characterize when their movements are more stable and more fluid, that they're on, or in relation to when they've taken their medication, they're having an off period where they're less stable, they have more tremors, they have more rigidity. So I'm making mention with regard to your symptoms, whether you're in an on or off phase in terms of how you're feeling, which often comes in relation to your medication dose.
Thanks, Jennifer. And if I understand the other question, I think someone is asking about what to do if they are in too much pain to exercise.
Okay, so that the next slide up here, listen to your body. You know, with regard to an injury or just general pain, first that does get back to check with your doctor to see if there's any reason for that specific pain. You know, I know from my dad, pain was very much an all of the time thing. It wasn't necessarily just a you know, he tweaked something. It was an all the time thing, and he did take pain medication just over the counter to help with that. But if it's more of an acute thing, there's you need to rest something. If it's an acute thing, ice it. An anti-inflammatory massage sometimes may help. But that I would refer to check with physician if it's an overall pain issue. I don't know if that helps or not.
Thanks, Jennifer. So that's all the questions we have so far.
Okay. So here's your listen to your body and know your limits. If you're doing something and it's hurting, or you're feeling more tired than you think you should be, then you're allowed to take a break and maybe you switch things up. So always making sure to pay attention to how you're feeling. So when we talk about the different components for somebody to incorporate into a movement program when they have Parkinson's, I feel like there are 4 things to focus on, and those are cardiovascular, flexibility, strengthening, and balance. And these are components for anybody to incorporate into a a wellness exercise program, but balance is something a little bit more specific that you focus on with Parkinson's. So cardiovascular is your activities that increase your heart rate, your aerobic activities, things that are large body movements that get your whole body moving, increase your heart rate. Those, generally speaking, and again, everything's very individualized, and unless your physician says otherwise, generally 3 to 4 times a week, and maybe a 30-minute bout. And again, that can be 3 10-minute sessions. It does not have to be 30 minutes at a time. So cardiovascular, going for a walk, riding a stationary bicycle. A lot of times I'm asked by people with Parkinson's in terms of exercise equipment. And back when I did cardiac rehab, there was this exercise piece of equipment called the New Step. And I actually went on earlier today to see if they still make it, and they do. It is a recumbent stepper. So basically what it is, it's almost like, think of a stationary bicycle, but what happens is the chair swivels out for you to get into it. So you don't have to mount over that center bar on a stationary bicycle that I think can be a little bit dangerous for people with Parkinson's. And again, when I was working in cardiac rehab, for them, it was also dangerous for them to have to, that's a balance challenge for sure. So it's called New Step. And I'm gonna put my email in, it's at the end of this slide presentation show, which Lauren, I think you will share with everybody. So if anybody wants to reach out to me about that, I have no stake in the company. I get nothing from mentioning it, but it when I think of somebody with Parkinson's, if there's a piece of at-home equipment, and I'm sure they are not cheap, but it's just a user-friendly for our population piece of equipment. Then flexibility, so stretching, and that you can do daily as you're able. And do not bounce in stretches, hold your stretches, and be sure to breathe while you're stretching. You should not be moving to the point of pain. There's a point at which you will know where you should stop. And stretching all of your major body parts, muscle groups would be beneficial. So strengthening is your muscle-based. You can use light weights, you can use exercise bands, and you are going to adjust your weight or how many sets of these exercises you do, how many times you do it, so that it's challenging but comfortable. So all of this is moderately challenging. The same with your cardiovascular exercise as well. An increase in heart rate, but not to the point that you're breathing really, really heavy. And balance work, which is so important because we are at increased risk for falling with Parkinson's disease. And making sure when you do this training that you are in a safe surrounding. So making sure there's nothing, if you were to fall, that you're not going to hit into something. So standing and balancing on one leg, not lifting your leg way up high. You want to have your foot lifted just a bit so you can place it right back down. Stand on a rolled towel to give you a little bit of an uneven surface to help you work that balance. And again, that can be done daily as well. So things to keep in mind. Bigger, more powerful movements are our movements with Parkinson's tend to be much smaller. We have more of a shuffling, smaller gait. So movements that are bigger and more powerful. And getting back to that, increasing your heart rate, somewhat physically challenged. So you can feel that your heart rate has gone up. And I have RPE on this slide. There's something called rating of perceived exertion. And it's basically, how hard do you feel like you are working? And there's all different kinds of scales for it. Some of them are a little not as user friendly. So I will usually say to somebody that I'm working with, I'm going to give you a scale of from 1 to 10. How hard do you feel like you're working? So if you're down at a 1 or 2, you can probably give me a little bit more. If you are at an 8 or a 9, you're working a little too hard. I don't want anybody working at an 8 or a 9. So maybe you're at about a 6, maybe a 7. So when you're doing that aerobic exercise, try to keep that in mind. Mentally challenging activities that challenge mind and body at the same time. Lauren, we just had on, I guess was it last week that the Dance for Parkinson's, the researcher did a presentation on the benefits of the program and why is it helpful. And having gone through the training program myself, a lot of what makes that program helpful and successful for people with Parkinson's is that it's working both physically and cognitively at the same time. So, and that's also been said for the Rocksteady program, is you're doing the physical movement, but you're also having to engage cognitively. You're having to think ahead what movement patterns are coming next. Okay, we're doing 8 of this, then we're moving to the other foot. We're doing 6 jabs and then we're moving. So an activity that allows you to engage both of those systems simultaneously has shown a lot of benefit. So the social piece of things, connecting and belonging, is huge. And I think that I tell my class that each week that our family atmosphere, our connection there is, I would say, just as important as the physical movement that we're doing. So knowing that you have that community, if you have the opportunity to go to an in-person exercise class or session where you have your friends waiting for you, that's a lot of motivation. Gradually increase one component at a time, especially if you are new to exercise. You don't want to, going back to that last slide that I had up, you don't want to add all of this starting next week. So it is a component at a time, not all at once. And choosing a time of day that is best for you. So that's back to what time works for you just on your own personal schedule. What time do you enjoy? When do you feel best? Especially with Parkinson's, and again, with regard to your medication timing. So keeping it simple, turn on your favorite music and dance, gardening, things that you may not necessarily think of. Again, back to not necessarily thinking of exercise, but thinking of how do I incorporate movement into my day-to-day life. So walking your pet, I'm a big advocate of just getting out there and walking. If it is safe for you to do, if you're comfortable being out there walking, it is the easiest and cheapest exercise to do. Golf, you can still ride the cart. You don't necessarily have to walk 18 or 9 holes, but that's another, and it's also a social, there's a social component to that as well. Yoga, that's going to get at that balance and stretching and strengthening all of those components in a yoga session. And simply doing leg exercises while you're watching TV, doing some stretching while you're watching TV, very light hand weights for arm exercises. Easy ways to incorporate. Stop if you feel pain, if you feel unsafe, and if the exercise feels too difficult. So back to that, if you have an RPE, a rating of perceived exertion, up at an 8 or 9, that's a little too difficult. So let's take that down a notch. If you feel unsafe, with regard to your surroundings, make sure your surroundings are safe for you to be exercising. And I do need to address fall considerations. So sometimes I think that people with Parkinson's will avoid exercise because of the fear of falling, and that is legitimate. So just taking into account, have you fallen in the past? When was it? What was the environment that you fell in? I've gone to people's houses before and said to them, hey, you need to pick up your throw rugs because that is a hazard for you. So when I've worked with people in their homes, I'll look at their environment and say, that's not conducive to not falling. And what time did you take your last dose of medication? Back to that on and off period that I was talking about before. You know, once you've been on your medication for a long enough time, you know when you feel physically at your best. So timing your exercise around that obviously will lower that risk of falling. And what activities are you doing? Is it a safe activity for you to be doing? Will I recommend to, as a blanket recommendation for people with Parkinson's, to go outside and ride a bike? Maybe not, because that, to me, that could be a fall risk. So, but again, it's individualized. So not saying that you can't, but just taking into account yourself and what your abilities are. Listening to your body. Okay, so listen to your body. And this is, and I don't want anybody to take this as this is exactly what is offered every single week, but I pulled this off of PACS. This was this week's schedule. So I just am trying to give you examples that within our PAC community here of all of the options. It depends obviously geographically where you are, but there are even Zoom classes. So there are opportunities throughout the week for yoga, which I would highly, highly, highly encourage. Again, the yoga gets at so many of those different pieces, and it's gentle movement. So it's something that within reason, I would say everybody can do. And when you also work with somebody, if you're working with a professional, choose somebody who is familiar with Parkinson's and who has worked with Parkinson's, because they will know the nuances. And going to a yoga class with a Minta versus going to a yoga class at the Y is going to be very different. Not that they are not good classes, but they don't know the nuances of Parkinson's and how to help you most. So, and there are Zoom options for some of these classes. Shameless self plug, come take my Dance for Parkinson's class on Thursdays. We have lots of fun. And again, not local here in Charlotte, there's a pedaling for Parkinson's class. And again, don't take this as the schedule for every week, but I just wanted to give it to you as an example because we're incredibly blessed with all of the offerings that Parkinson's Association of the Carolinas has. I'm impressed every week I get my email. So I do want to make sure we have time for questions. And I am putting my email in this. And again, Lauren will share this. I don't know if it will be on the website or if she will share it with those of you who are registered, but you are more than welcome to email me with questions.
Jennifer, thank you so much. Again, another informative session. And I will say I'm going to do 2 shameless plugs as well on behalf of Jennifer. The first is that this session is going to be shared on PAC's YouTube channel. Jennifer has done some other sessions for us as well. And so you're welcome to check out PAC's YouTube channel. And I will send you all an email with this recorded session. And you can use the link and then explore PAC's YouTube channel for Jennifer's sessions and others sessions. And then the other plug is I have had the privilege of going to Jennifer's class, and it is one of our newest movement therapy programs, but it really is a great opportunity to move and just get connected to community. She does a lot of fun things with music and sometimes costumes, and it's a really nice way to be moving and not really even know you're moving. So please check out PAC's website. Her class is on Thursdays at noon at it's Christ Lutheran Church. Jennifer, am I correct?
It is. It's Christ Lutheran Church, but it's actually at 11 a.m.
Oh, 11, I'm sorry, 11 a.m. And that is on our website. So I encourage everyone to join. And now for Q&A, if anyone does have any questions, like I said, please feel free to raise your hand or type your question in the chat. And I do have some questions, Jennifer, for you while we wait to see if anybody else has questions. The first question is, wait, let me see if I think somebody else has a question. I'll go here first. Can you explain why my PCP has told me to drink gallons of water each day?
Okay, gallons. Gallons. Okay, so I would say the general recommendation tends to be 8 ounce glasses of a day. So is that even a gallon? That, I guess that's a gallon is eight. I think a gallon is 64 ounces. So our bodies are made up predominantly of water. So increasing your water intake is going to help with your circulation. It's going to help maintain your blood volume. Dehydration is a pretty common issue with Parkinson's. I don't want to say everybody has it. It's not that prevalent, but I would say more than half of the population with Parkinson's tends to have dehydration. So maintaining that normal water balance in your body is probably why he is suggesting that. Especially in the summers here in Charlotte, if you're going to exercise, you definitely want to keep up that hydration. So from a cardiac perspective, that helps balance you out. So I don't want to contradict anything a doctor said, but typically the rule of thumb, the recommendation is 8 ounce glasses a day. Or I'll tell people, get a big water bottle, a big refillable water bottle, and fill it up twice a day. And I also, my other thing is, I'll tell people with Parkinson's to drink more of their water earlier in the day, because restlessness at night tends to come along with Parkinson's, and I don't want you to have to make a million trips overnight to the bathroom when you're probably unsteady on your feet and in a dark room. So when you're trying to get in all of that water, I always tell people, start your day, get that first big refillable water bottle in very early in the day, just so you're not having to make a lot of overnight bathroom trips when it's not quite as safe.
So another question we have is, will there be new Zoom classes? And we are always trying to be creative and responsive to the needs of our Parkinson's members and our Parkinson's community members. And so Zoom has become kind of popular, and it's interesting because we're actually exploring an opportunity for Jennifer to teach her Dance for Parkinson's classes via Zoom. And we're not sure if that will happen this fiscal year. We're going to try and maybe even do a trial run within the next month or so. And so please stay tuned for those communications, because we'll be announcing that session if that's, whenever that's going to happen. And of course, if anybody is interested in Zoom types of sessions, whether it's yoga or dance or pedaling, please let us know. You can even share it in the chat, because we want to hear from you all. That is really how we make decisions on what programs to offer and where to offer them and how to offer them in this digital age of dealing with the pandemic.
You all are so responsive. So I would encourage anybody on here, if there are certain things you're looking to see, you're who Lauren and Anne Marie need to hear from with regard to what you would like to see on the schedule, and whether it's in person or Zoom. I'm just so impressed with all that you all do.
So Jennifer, another question was about, okay, let's see. What kind of alternatives and exercise programs would be beneficial to PD participants?
Kinds of alternatives. So again, back to adding in movement just to your day-to-day life. So how can you take the stairs instead of an elevator if you're someplace where stairs or versus an elevator is? Can you park your car a little bit further away and walk when you drive somewhere? I want you to think about it in terms of, how can I add movement in my day-to-day life? If I have a dog, as opposed to just letting them out in the backyard, well, can I take them for a walk to the corner and back? Again, when I'm watching TV, what stretching can I do? What movement can I do? You can do arm exercises, simply raising and lowering your arms without any weights. And I promise you, with enough repetitions, you will feel some effects. There's the physical therapy side of things. If you were able to do physical therapy, depending on, referral systems with your physician and insurance and everything, that can most definitely be beneficial. And then, as we were talking about the programs that are offered here in Charlotte and through PAC, the yoga classes, the pedaling for Parkinson's, there's rock steady boxing classes, if that is something you think you would enjoy. And just how to fit it into your day.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Sure. I'm looking at the chat as we're going.
Okay.
Are there
Yes.
Zoom, continued yoga, dance, pedaling, boxing. And I think probably, Lauren, you probably have the resources for all of those. I think on the website for all of the classes that are offered in the area.
Yes. So right now, the only Zoom class that we do have is gentle yoga, and that's on Wednesdays in the afternoon. As I mentioned, we are trying to explore doing some Zoom classes for dancing, and possibly even just recording Jennifer's sessions and then making them available on YouTube, on PAC's YouTube channel, for people to participate at a later time. So, so Patty, thank you for your feedback, and we will, we're working on this because we really want to be accommodating and reach even those remote parts of North and South Carolina.
I mean, I think that's one of those, I'm going to say that that's one of those silver linings to come out of this, that we can reach people all over now. This may have, I don't know if this would have been in person before, but now we're all in our warm houses on this chilly night, and we're getting to interact and engage. And you can take a Zoom yoga class if you're out in Myrtle Beach and Aminta is here in Charlotte. John, I see, are there some goals that we should try to reach? So that's going to be specific for each person. And if you go back to that page that I had up that had all the different components, if you can add those in, so cardiovascular 3 or 4 times a week, so an activity that's going to increase your heart rate. And again, not a 1 or 2 out of 10, not a 9 or 10 out of 10, but that 6 or 7 out of 10, if you can get that in there 3 or 4 times a week. And then those other things, the stretching and balance, the flexibility training, those can be done every day. And strengthening 3 times a week is more than sufficient. And the goals are going to be specific to each person. And I think that you will know if you're increasing your mobility. You will know if your posture is improving, and you'll see that in your walk, in how you're carrying yourself. I will constantly be telling my people, okay, there's a string pulling you up to the ceiling, nice and tall, shoulders back and down. You can take stock of whether or not it's helping you. Looking through the chat still. On and off. I think the stretching question, I think I answered that. Top recommendations. Lauren, I think I got those other ones right.
I think you did.
We kind of went through them. An acute injury, so something you pulled, or an injury that you just got. There's the acronym RICE, rest, ice, compression, and elevation. So a bag of frozen peas on a shin that's bothering you, or on a foot that's bothering you, if you're able to take an anti-inflammatory like ibuprofen. But rest. There's a time and a place for rest. And if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask, you are more than welcome to do that. And again, if you have questions that you want to ask me offline, feel free to email me.
So I think if no one else has any other questions, I am going to stop the recording now. This will be available on our YouTube channel by the end of the week, and I will also send out an email to everyone who registered. I hope that everybody found this to be informative, and I really hope most of all that you all find some way to move it, whether that's at PAX programs or elsewhere. Before I end the recording, Leo is asking, are there any types of dance that would help?
Okay, so in our class, we do a little bit of everything. I pull in some ballet influences. Today we did some country dancing. I actually, last week, my daughter was a part of a dance performance. It was a montage of all different performers from Charlotte, and they had a West African drum session, and I watched it and pulled pieces from it that I'm going to use in our class next week. I still haven't figured it all out yet, but I'm trying to pull some music, and we're going to do some West African drum music and dancing in our class next week. So it's whatever you enjoy, whatever speaks to you. I try to pull in music for our dance classes that are my audience is going to enjoy. We do a lot of Frank Sinatra. I use some Beatles. I tell my class, suggest to let me know. I take requests. So it is whatever kind of dance is going to motivate you to move. And nothing super complicated. It's not super complicated footwork, but it is moving your body to music, and that mental stimulation that comes, that's the other piece to it, the cognitive, along with, oh, Patty, I would love for you to come. Are you in Charlotte? Shagging. Yeah. Yes. One of our members used to be a musician, and he is okay, quarantining in Salisbury. Okay, well, when we're no longer quarantining, you have to come to my class. I promise we have lots of fun. But one of our dancers was a musician, and he's out for the next couple of weeks. But I said, you know what, we're gonna do 76 trombones, and I have this, so it's very trying to make it so that it is fun, because let's face it, if it's not fun, we're not gonna want to do it. I don't want to exercise if I don't enjoy it. So thank you. I'm new to all of this, and your information is encouraging. It's all we can do is keep moving.
Jennifer, I love that. I feel like I'm going to share that quote at a later point. And I'm putting in the chat right now a list of movement therapy programs throughout North and South Carolina is available on our website. And this is the link to access that list. Our program coordinator spent the past 2 to 3 months contacting all of the locations and updating it. And so this is what we have right now: active programs throughout the Carolinas that you can go to on different days of the week, some in person and some virtual. So please check out that list and try to find a program that's right for you. Are there any other questions before we conclude this session?
Thank you all for taking the time to be here and making it a priority tonight. You ticked the first box.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for joining. As I mentioned, the recording will be available. Jennifer, thank you as always for educating and empowering our community members. And I hope that everyone has a good evening.
Thank you all.